Hey guys, and welcome to season 3 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and in this season, I get to make my guests laugh, cry, and even make them think about life a little differently with the questions I fire over to them, which digs into their lives and professions a little differently. We even had a chance to change up the intro, giving you a fresh, new sound. I look forward to sharing season 3 of the Us People podcast with you. Let's go.
Excellent. You have to be in showbiz with a name like Savia Rocks. I'm sorry, you should be. I'm sure you've been told that before, but you have to be.
Made up my mind, now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Yes People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I'm humbled to have Rebecca here with me, who is the global head and creator of creative insights, I should say, at Getty Images. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming to the Yes People podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Lovely to see you, Savia.
And you too. Perfect. So, my first question for you, which I always ask absolutely everyone on the podcast, I always love to know a bit about who you are as a person before we go into the depth of what you do. So Rebecca, could you tell me a little bit about your life and your background of where you grew up and how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in a small village in East Anglia on the Suffolk-Norfolk border. And unfortunately, from a very young age, I had ear problems. And so I would have to visit Guy's Hospital near London Bridge in London on a regular basis. And so from the age of 9 till about the age of 16, I would come to London 3 or 4 times a year. And I had many operations. And as a treat, after the doctor's appointment, it was usually my father actually would let me go somewhere in London, and one of my favourite places was HMS Belfast, and another favourite place was the London Dungeons, and we pretty much went between the two, every time we came. But I got a taste of London from a very early age, and my parents are both from London originally, and so I wanted to leave East Anglia as soon as I possibly could. And it's interesting talking to my brothers now. I have 3 younger brothers, and they remember me always talking about, I'm going to go to London. I'm going to end up in London. That's where I'm going to work. And so I went off to university. I studied English literature and sociology. And through doing sociology, actually, I got a real interest in advertising as an industry. Obviously, there's not much of an advertising industry in Suffolk. And so I then signed up to do a postgraduate in advertising at what used to be called Watford College and is now called West Herts University, I believe. And it was the only place at the time, I'm talking early 90s now, where you could study advertising as a subject. And that's where I learnt my craft really. And so naturally, I was nearly in London. I was in Watford.
That's not too far.
So I'm getting closer as time goes on. And I moved to London, as you do, or you did in the 90s. It was affordable with a gang of friends.
Yeah.
We moved to a flat in Clapham, which was the cheapest place to live at the time, if you can believe that. Now it's not.
Yeah.
And started looking for jobs. And I really wanted to work in an ad agency. God, I'm so glad I didn't now. It's amazing how fate fate finds its way. So I would always get the Guardian newspaper on a Monday, and that was where all the media ads were, and they were always little tiny ads, almost like a classified ad for jobs. And I saw an ad in there one Monday, and it was a job. It was a photo agency looking for staff. So I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. It's not what I want to do, but it's fine. And I applied for it, and I was just about to go to America for the first time. So I was very, very excited about that on holiday.
Yeah.
And that's all I was thinking about, actually, to be honest. I went to the interview. This just shows how arrogant you can be when you're younger. Went off to America, didn't think anything of it, came back and they offered me the job. And I was like, oh, and I specifically remember telling my friends at the time, I'm going to do this job for 18 months to 2 years. And then I'm going to move into advertising. And I worked, and it was in an agency that actually became Getty Images. And I was there for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I left. And then I came, and then I've more recently I've been back again. But it was interesting how I had this impression that I was just going to hop from job to job to job, and then I ended up doing that job for such a long period of time, which is a great, I think, it's a great endorsement of the company.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how life kind of takes you, and I do a lot of teaching now. I'm very fortunate to work with BA and MA photography students, especially commercial photography.
Yeah.
And, that's the question I always get asked. How did you get into the business? How did you break in? And I'm actually quite embarrassed about my story. Because it wasn't a, I wanted to be a photographer since I was a young child, and I got a camera for my birthday. And then it was like, well, actually, I just needed a job, and I fell into it. And actually, out of working in the industry is where the passion came, rather than wanting to get into the industry because I felt passionate, if you see what I mean. So yeah, that's my story. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now. But otherwise, in terms of who I am, as I say, I've got 3 brothers. I've always been very kind of active and very sporty, and got involved in judo as a sport when I moved to London. I had done it as a teenager, but I and wanted to get my black belt, which I did, and then competed all over the country and in Europe, and made some great friends, and met my husband, and we obviously carried on judo for a long time. We have a daughter now who's 19.
Yeah.
And when she was about 4 or 5, we set up our own judo club, and we decided we were going to, train the kids in the village, because I live in a village now outside of London. Damn it! But I work in London still when I can, not right now, obviously. And we decided to set up a judo club because we wanted obviously her, with those kind of genes, she was going to be amazing. She was going to be the best judo player ever. And the club's still going now. As I say, 15 years later. She was awful, absolutely awful. She was probably the worst student we ever had, but she got into trampolining and competed at trampolining, and kind of found her passion. She didn't go down the route that we wanted her to do, because kids do that, don't they? Which is really annoying.
Did you just say that's annoying?
And so now in later life, as my bones are starting to get a bit more brittle, and I've got more injuries, I'm starting. I have a running group, a group of ladies that I run with. Ladies, we like to think we're ladies. There's 8 of us that runs regularly. We run every morning before work, and a group of cycling, doing mountain biking and off-roading and that kind of thing. So still very active. It literally keeps me sane, especially during lockdown.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because otherwise I'm just sitting around all day, and that I'm not my best person. I'm not my best me when I'm sat down in meetings all day. So yeah. I think that's kind of me. I'm learning to play the ukulele, so I play it very badly at the moment. I belong to a ukulele group. We're doing that on Zoom at the moment. That's quite a sound, as you can imagine.
Quest. So how's it going? Like, how do you feel when you're playing it?
I really like it, actually. I think one of the it sounds really bizarre, but working in a creative job and being creative means that when you get to your downtime, oddly, I don't actually feel that creative. I think I probably take the least number of photographs of my whole family, because I'm kind of over it by the time I get to my free time. And usually in normal circumstances, I get my kind of creative fulfillment from going to the theatre or going to galleries and having that kind of input.
Yeah.
So this is a different kind of input. I think, people have been talking about what they've been doing since lockdown, baking and home improvements and knitting and things. And I've been playing the ukulele longer, but it's nice to just do something that's quite simple. And it should be simple. I seem to make it quite complicated, but it is quite simple, I think. And I had it because I studied for a PhD, and I took a really long time to complete it. It was 8 years in the end. And I at the top of my list, because I kind of kept a list of things I wanted to do when it was over, was to do something like learn the ukulele. So I started that when I finished studying. Yeah.
Oh wow. I would love to hear you play it. Like maybe at the end of the podcast, I can just pull it at the end.
No, you really, really don't.
Why? It can't be that bad, Rebecca. It can't be that bad.
It really is. Yeah.
I wanted to let people know more about you and let people know more of an insight about you. So what I'm going to ask is, Rebecca, could you break down a day in your life of doing what you do at work, just so people can understand exactly what you do?
Yeah, sure. What, from the moment I wake up? Because I'm quite busy before I wake up. Before I get to work.
Yeah,
rather.
Go for it. Go for the.
All right,
go for when you open your eyes.
Okay. Woo. Within 10 minutes of waking up, so I've timed it now, I can leap out of bed, get my gym kit on, downstairs, roll my yoga mat out, get the Zoom on, and then I do a HIIT class, like a boot camp class for 30 minutes. And there's a group of us that have been doing it together since March, so many months now. And so I do that for 30 minutes, and then I put my trainers on. I brush my teeth, because after that I'm going to see people, so I brush my teeth. Then I get my trainers on, and then I meet my friends to run. And we have a 5K route that we do every morning, and it's the same route. So I need to calculate how many times I've done it, actually, because it's hundreds. Because we started on the 16th of March, and then we run 5 days a week. So I run around, and then I come home, and then I have a bowl of porridge, cup of tea, shower, stretch, bit of a stretch, because again, got to keep the bones going. And then I'm at my desk. And really, the mornings for me are mostly Europe based. So it would be talking to my team who work with our European clients. Sometimes I'll start early and we'll work with our Asia or our Australian teams. But mostly it's very European focused, and we it could be anything from talking at a conference. It could be talking to a client about a problem they're trying to solve. It could be talking to my team about work that they're doing. Specifically on specific industries, or a collection that we're working on. We've just, in the last month, we've launched a project that we were working on with the BBC, which was about broadening the representation of children in the UK, which the BBC are really, really passionate about. And they have put up some money to help seize funds, so a kind of a grant system for new photographers, especially in underrepresented parts of the UK. We have a lot of photographers in London. We don't have so many in the Midlands, or even the north of England, actually. So trying to encourage more participation in photography in this country. So those kind of meetings. And then around about between 1 and 2 o'clock is when the New Yorkers start to wake up. And that's when it starts to get very US focused. And again, we're working on some really big projects around women in sports. And so we're talking to various sports organizations and license holders. So people who, own the rights for football or cricket or rugby or American football or whatever. And then, various meetings with marketing and branding and our PR teams and our creative teams as well. And then that kind of rolls into around about 5 and 6 o'clock when the West Coast start to show their faces. And it goes on then, and it can, sometimes I might be finished by 6 o'clock. Sometimes I might, it might go on till really, really late because we're a global organization. We try to organize our global meetings so that not everyone misses out. It's very easy to meet US and Europe together and then miss out Asia. So sometimes I have to do really late night, but I have someone in my team who does the kind of 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. shift for Asia Pac, which is great. Yeah. So I don't have to. So yeah, I mean, that's very different obviously to what it was pre-lockdown. Pre-lockdown, I would have been probably on a plane traveling somewhere, probably, at a photo shoot, at an event, meeting contributors, meeting clients, much more interesting than just hopping from meeting to meeting. But I that's the case for everyone right now.
Yeah, definitely. That is. Yeah. You're kind of locked in a room or. Yeah,
I know. I was in New York the end of February, beginning of March, and I remember I was supposed to be talking at the UN, which was a really, really important. Well, for me, not for anyone else. The world wasn't going to change.
No, it's
for me
important.
Talking at the UN. It was there was a women's conference. And we created this amazing art piece, which was going to sit in the UN, which hopefully it still will, about the evolution of the representation of women in advertising. It's a huge it's like 50 foot wide and 10 foot high. It's really, really big. So we were going to launch that the beginning of March. And I remember, the Americans saying, "Oh, it's got to be really careful. We're going to have to cancel the UN meeting." Which was fair enough because there's people flying in from all over the world and they didn't want to encourage that. But I was like, oh, these Americans are making such a fuss about this COVID. It's like, and then I flew home and it's like, oh, okay. So it is really big, turns out. So I'm hoping that will kind of come back and there'll be the opportunity to launch that next year instead.
I think there will be an opportunity to launch it. It sounds beautiful. I'm just trying to imagine how it looks, but my imagination is quite vast, so it will go all over the place.
It's currently sitting in a load of crates because it's obviously had to be taken down in pieces. It's sitting in New Jersey in a crate in these crates at the moment, which is really depressing. But what are you going to do?
I'm an optimist for you, Rebecca. I'm
Thank
an optimist.
Thank you. Please, do a dance or some kind of.
Yeah, I love dancing. You can't stop me dancing. So, yep. What is the most difficult process of being creative for you? What's the most difficult part?
I think it's time. The most difficult thing is having time. I think I've worked out as I went through my PhD, actually, that I work better, and that's probably from having commercial experience. I work better when there's a very strict deadline and I'm just about to miss it. I think it's called eustress. There's a term for it, isn't there? I don't work well with having loads of time to think about stuff because I'll find something else to do. There'll be a YouTube video or something to read, or I don't know, something shiny to look at.
Shiny.
But if I know it has to be done at midnight and it's 11 p.m, then I can get it done, and which is great if you work in the work that I do, because we always have deadlines to hit. But when you've got like this unknown amount of time, you have 8 years to complete your PhD. I know what I'll do. I'll take the whole 8 years, which is exactly what I did. Yeah. So I think that's. I always wish I had more time, but I know it doesn't suit me personally to have more time.
No,
I'm not a planner.
I definitely know how you feel. I plan, but then it doesn't go to plan, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yeah.
And that's, I understand how you feel. Who has been one of your inspirations in your life to help you to wake up every morning and say, yes, this is something that I want to do, not just from your perspective, but also from somebody who pushes you and inspires you every day? It could be many people, because some people have many people throughout their life. But has there been any particular person who you could say, this person has supported me?
That's a really good question, actually, and it's not something I've spent a whole lot of time pondering on. I think it's, in terms of my work, it's probably individuals that have either I've worked alongside or I have worked for in the time, across time. Now I'm in a different position. I think when I was younger and less experienced, it was looking up to people who I felt inspired me in terms of wanting to be like them, or wanting to work in the way that they work. I think in my life, it's my friends. In terms of we're especially the my friends that I run with, we're all very opinionated and very gobby. And actually, my husband always says he hates being around us when we're talking, because we sound like a load of geese and we talk over each other, just like you can imagine the scene. But I think in terms of like that, unwavering support and that pushing and reminding and saying, come on, you're going to do this, or you can do this. I think it's got to be, my close, tight knit group of friends. And then obviously when I was doing academic work, it was my professor. She was such an inspiration to me. And just to give you some background, I actually started my PhD at LCC in London, which is part of the University of the Arts, and she got a directorship of a department at De Montfort in Leicester. Now I live in the south, De Montfort's in the Midlands, and she moved to that department, and I went with her because rather than being associated with the university, I wanted to be associated with her and her research. So I didn't actually go to Leicester that much. We tended to meet in London more than in Leicester. And she, oh my goodness me, she could make me sweat just by seeing her name in my inbox.
Well, she's got power, but
I still laugh about that now. And I used to get these packets through the post of my work, and it would she had this purple pen that she would write across all my work with, and I had lived in fear of this purple pen, and I'd get these packets of work come through and it would just be pages of purple. But I tell you what, she changed the way I write. She changed the way I think about how I write. She made me into an academic, because I didn't have a clue. I left academia in the 1990s and I went back in 2009. So there was a great big gap, and tons of different ways of writing and thinking. I love an exclamation mark. I've put a lot of exclamation marks into my emails and my texts, and I had to have that knocked out of me.
Oh wow.
So she was amazing to me, and she actually retired while I was still finishing, and still carried on and helped me get through. So amazing woman. Professor Elizabeth Edwards, if anyone wants to look her up, she's a visual anthropologist.
I might have to get her on the podcast to talk to me, because she sounds cool.
She's fabulous.
Oh, most definitely. Okay, this is a question I love to ask people. We're only a couple questions in, but how do you handle difficult clients?
Oh my God, I wish I could give you some kind of like magic bullet that we have for dealing with. I'm too confrontational. I'm not very good. I mean, I tend to fight back, and that's not the greatest thing. And I really admire, there's people that I work with who I really admire who can diffuse a situation just by being so incredibly positive um, and thoughtful in their responses. Whereas I'm like, okay, right, we're gonna have a fight here, and I'm going to take you on one-to-one. So yeah, I don't know that I necessarily am the best person to give us to even talk about it. But I think it's always it's usually a misunderstanding. It's usually a kind of our expectations are out of whack. A client will always expect everything they want plus more for less money, and you're trying to be realistic with the budget, and they don't a lot of the time they don't understand the logistics of photo shoots, and so
That's
we'll
true.
add in extra elements and expect the same price. So yeah, I mean, I think you being able to manage expectations and being eloquent and gracious in doing that is the best way to do it. And as I
like
say,
the way you
not always
smiled
the
after
person who's most gracious, but
I wouldn't mess with you though, Rebecca, because you remember you do judo, so
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know, and I don't think that necessarily helps in terms of combative attitude.
well, it might help you out of a situation one day. But there you
Yeah,
go.
true. Yeah.
How would you say you educate yourself when you're looking at different images? Every image has a different. How can I say? Every image has a different resonance or towards people. Makes people feel different. Gives people a different outlook. How do you look at different images every day and say to yourself, this image is different from this image for this reason? And how does it elevate you to learn from that image?
Yeah, I think I'm probably one of the worst people to show your holiday pictures to because I've seen so many images. I'm really privileged. I get to judge a lot of competitions and awards, and and it's which is amazing. It means I get to see emerging talent, but I've also seen it a million times before. So for me, it's the things that I'm most interested in, and the things that really pique my interest, and that I learn from, is either something that's been done in a new way, and it doesn't have to be revolutionary. It's just slightly different to what I'm used to seeing. Then that I find really, really interesting and genius a lot of the time. Or it's people who are working in the industry who haven't been worked before. I've done a lot of work around bringing people into the industry who haven't traditionally been well represented, and I love seeing like women. I'll talk about female creators and how women approach projects and the content that they create, and that really inspires me, and I get a lot of nourishment, I think, from that. Likewise, looking at communities that I haven't seen a lot of imagery from. I use Africa, and it's an entire continent, but there are countries within Africa that are not well represented visually. They're represented in sometimes a harmful way. I'm interested in how the country itself, how the country represents itself, how contributors, photographers, filmmakers are creating content within that country, and that I find really, really interesting. Really, really fascinating.
You can always tell that you love your passion, Rebecca, just by the sheer smile on your face when you talk about it. I know people can't see, but I can see, which is cool. But you can always tell when someone loves what they do by the sheer grin from ear to ear, and you can see them thinking about it at the same time.
I have to say, working in photography, it's interesting how you kind of feel. I've already said it. I feel like I've seen it all. I've seen it a million times,
Yeah.
but I haven't. And it keeps reiterating and it keeps evolving, and you consider some element of photography that you might not have thought about before, or genres start to collide. We're seeing the collision of advertising and documentary photography right now, and the two are looking very, very similar, and which we've never seen. What I've not seen in the time I've been in the industry. Or a certain color palette comes into focus, or a certain way of filming becomes really popular. Slow-mo's been big, and time lapse, because all of that technology is becoming available via our iPhones, or other phones are available. And so, you see all that for the first time. Drone footage. I mean,
that's cool.
Seeing drone footage for the first time, and when, watching movies now, or TV shows when they've used drones, you think, gosh, a few years ago they wouldn't have been able to create that content. So there's always something exciting, and I love seeing what the younger generations are creating, and how they approach imagery. I'm going to say imagery, and creating it, consuming it, disposing of it. That's a whole new generation. I've been part of the younger generation. Now I'm not part of the younger generation, so it's interesting to see the things that I am passionate about, and I really believe are signs of quality in imagery is not necessarily what somebody who has been consuming imagery from a very young age feels. So yeah, it's always interesting.
Which is cool. I like that. How important, I know we were talking about women and having women in the industry, but for you, how important is it to you to be a woman and be a creative woman in the industry? And I know words have power, but also how important is it from a female perspective to have women of power in the industry of making images powerful, knowing that they have been taken by women to change people's perspective on how they think and feel about imagery?
I mean, it's fascinating to me. In that I did at least 20 years in the industry, never questioned it.
Yeah.
I never thought, oh gosh, all my bosses are men, or all of the people in power seem to be men. Oh, all of the photographers that we talk about are men. All of the photographers that are famous are men. And it was only really pretty recently, probably in the last 3 years or so, that really started to question it. And I think it's probably got a lot to do with my generation now getting into positions of power, and there are more of us, us females, and so we now also, I think probably it's attitude, rather than thinking, okay, we need to keep quiet, make sure that our fragile men are, their egos don't get crushed under the power of the female leaders, is to say, actually, we can change this from within. And that's really what I've been focusing on, is like, okay, I'm here now. I don't, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna bring everybody up with me. And I worked on a fabulous project with Dove on bringing more female contributors into the industry, and having that platform that Dove created, which was massive, for the Show Us project, enabled us to kind of create a call to action to all women to visualize themselves, and for female creators to visualize other women. And it's interesting how this conversation of the objectification of women especially has been, I mean, it's generations old. I've got a book on my bookshelf actually from the 1970s, which talks about the depiction of women in the 70s, and that conversation hasn't changed. And so to be able to say, okay, well, if you create thousands of images, they've been shot by women, and the subjects are women, we used women, transgender women, and non-binary, and the person who was being photographed decided how she was photographed, what she wore, where she was shot, and how she was described in her metadata, which is really, really important. And we're not going to retouch those images in any way. That's showing the world how women create if they're left alone to do it themselves. And that created a groundswell in terms of how we then started as a business. So you think the company I work for is massive in terms of its reach, global company. And so we started to then change our attitudes internally about, how do we depict people of color? How do we depict people who live with disabilities? How are we depicting the LGBTQ plus community? How are we depicting aging, which is, that's a whole other subject to get into. And who's shooting that? And you start once you've questioned the one thing and you've kind of found a way through it, you can then kind of build up the courage to then ask questions about everything else. And I think courage is a really, really important aspect of the whole thing. Yeah. You've got to have courage. You've got to have it. I see the women who work for me who are 10, 20 years younger, and the big thing for me is kind of building that courage so that they're questioning everything on the way up. It's bloody annoying because they question me, but they, questioning everything on the way up, so that when they get to a position of power, then they feel strong, they feel very, stable on their own 2 feet. Yeah. Exactly. And I think, that I really hope that that's my legacy when I finally retire.
You just took away my last question from me.
Go on then.
No, that was my last question, but that's all the way at the end. Yeah. So I can still ask you, but we won't answer it right now.
All right. Yep. Okay. Moving on.
Here's a question for you, Rebecca. If I was to ask you, what does beauty mean to you within an image? What would you tell me?
Oh, I think, it could be two things. It could be, and it honestly depends if whether a person's in the image or not, because I think if a person's in the image, that tends to shift the perception of the image.
True.
Whereas if it's a beautiful landscape, for example, then the beauty's defined in a different way. It's definitely, I mean, for me, it's aesthetic. I mean, it has to be the combination of lighting, composition, subject matter, etc. And for me, it's it's when everything kind of collides and just works. I mean, there are images of that people take of what are they called? Like the sewer covers and, that kind of thing on the streets. And when it looks like it's got a little smiley face or it's anthropomorphic in some way, that can be beautiful as much as, a stunning person. I'm not really, I have to say, I'm not really drawn to traditional beauty. I'm more drawn to where a photographer has created a beautiful person out of in the way that they've shot somebody, if you get what I mean. Yeah, I think the easiest thing in the world is to shoot someone who's already beautiful. I mean, it's easy, isn't it? It's much easier to make someone who A, doesn't think they're beautiful, and B, is not classically beautiful, to make them look beautiful. Did I answer your question? I think I did.
Yeah, I like it. No, you did answer my question. I like it. Here's one for you. What does diversity mean to you? And how would you bring the essence of diversity, beauty, and creativity together as one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm pondering. So in my quieter moments, I'm pondering about quality and diversity as how do you combine the two? Diversity to me is where you have a range of something. Let's say, I mean, diversity, if we're talking about people specifically, that for example, we're representing a range of people from different backgrounds, socioeconomic groups, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender expression, etc., etc. I mean, that's kind of our commercial classification of diversity. But within that, you've also got, how people think and how they like to live their lives, and what their domestic setup is. And, you can kind of go down and down and down. And there's nothing more annoying than people talking about somebody being diverse. You can't be diverse by yourself. Exactly. You have to be, we're all diverse when we're all together. And, that I think is really, that's kind of where you need to make that. You need to kind of divide out. How do you define a person, and how do you define a group of people? And then within that, I actually think the notion of diversity in a group of people is probably the most beautiful thing you can see, rather than seeing a generic, homogenous group. Again, I think that's probably just because of my background coming from the 90s, when we were shot so much for that stuff. Now, when I see a group of people who don't look similar to each other, who look really interesting and full of character and personality, and look like they're emotionally balanced, and happy with themselves, and that to me is incredibly beautiful. And I love seeing that type of imagery. But thinking about diversity and quality in photography, the notion of quality in photography has kind of been currently, or in the past, has been extrapolated out of diversity. Diversity is seen as something separate to quality. Yeah. And I would argue now that anything that's good quality is diverse, or depicts diversity.
I like that. Definitely.
Yeah. I would love to be more eloquent in being able to explain it, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
As long as it comes, I always say to people, it's not about what you say, it's how it feels to you when you're saying it. That's the most important thing. And if that resonates with you, then that's the answer to the question. That's how it was meant to be. So I always say that to people. How do you feel about the direction? We spoke a little bit about this before, but how do you feel about the direction of the photography industry and where it is actually going? Because it's evolved so much in the years, but how do you feel about how can we encourage each other and empower each other to continuously be creative with each other, not as one person, but all together? How do you feel that we can work together?
Again, I think the younger generation, I don't want to say younger, but the newer photographers coming into the industry usually have come from a community background. They might be on Instagram, they might have been on Flickr in the old days, they might be part of an online community. So they have that natural affinity and that natural ability to communicate, whereas photography used to be very isolated and singular, and photographers used to have their own studio and their own kind of system that they worked on, and were very competitive and were competing against each other on a regular basis because they were pitching for a lot of stuff. Whereas now there is so much opportunity to shoot for digital platforms, social media, for your own, you can create your own audience through websites and Instagram and other visual social medias. That there is more opportunity to be a bit more collegiate about it and collaborate and come together. And I also would argue that having more women in the industry probably helps, because we naturally want to be sociable. And again, just before lockdown, we started a women's kind of drop-in evening where we had women from all genres, sport, news, editorial, documentary, creative, who came together. And there was about 70 of us in the first meeting, and 4 women all stood up and just talked about their work. it was amazing, which I've never been part of anything like that before. And so we decided to just start it up and do it ourselves. And so we will, once we're back out in the world again, we'll do that again. And I think that was a great experience for a lot of women to share ideas and to kind of, spend time together and to talk about issues and moan about clients. And we had some great stories, So I think the world is moving in that direction. I also think that the generation of image buyers, image commissioners, art directors and things are now starting to leave the industry that were, the boys' club. Yeah. And the world, the consumer is expecting more from what we shoot and from who we ask to shoot it. The media is more intrigued as to who created the content. A brand cannot purport to be supporting Black Lives Matter and only hire white photographers to shoot their content, for example, which is, I'm sure you've seen it yourself, is what's happening. And those questions should have been asked a really, really long time ago, but, they're happening now, and that is going to be very exciting in the future. I think for those that are newer to the industry, they're going to see some real change.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to change. Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. People always ask people about their success story. So people always say to you, say for instance, Rebecca, what's your biggest campaign you've worked on, or you've had a lot of success in your life, but people never really talk about the failure side of things. Here it comes. So my question for you is, like I said, people always talk about success, but they never really talk about the failures. Could you tell me a time where you feel that you have utterly messed up somewhere? What did you all do to change your mindset and reevaluate things so that as you went on to do another project or another campaign, it helped you become a better person so you can understand things better?
Yeah, it's so funny. There was one occasion, it was the week before Christmas.
Ooh.
And probably the beginning of December, so a couple of weeks before that, I had agreed to shoot some video, some film of palm trees in the Caribbean. It was for a cruise company that were launching in the new year, and they needed 7 1-minute clips of palm trees. Absolutely, stunning, different times of day in the Caribbean. And it was a week before Christmas, and I was just leaving to go to our Christmas lunch at the pub, and I realised I'd completely forgotten to commission the videographer.
Are you serious?
And I still remember it. It's that moment of cold sweat, absolute panic. And luckily, this is where networks and contacts and having people around you that trust you and you trust them. There was a fabulous filmmaker who agreed to jump on a plane and go to the Caribbean. I can't remember which island he went to now, but he went and shot that content just before Christmas.
Oh wow!
And then flew back again. And he was based in Eastern Europe, so he probably enjoyed.
Oh yeah.
Christmas at Europe is not great, is it? So he probably enjoyed it as well. But I'm forever thankful for him for doing that, because I would have been shot. So what did I learn from it? I learned, I wish I could say I learned from it. I did learn from it in that I need to make sure that I always prioritize the right things. I am like the worst to-do list writer. I write them. I'm just looking at, the reason I'm looking around right now is that I've got them all over my desk, and I don't know which one's I don't know whether it's this one here. I don't know whether it's this one here. I have a different colours as well. A smaller one. And I have these ones. So
oh my gosh.
I'm just showing Savia all the various to-do lists that I have.
And they're all different colours as well, pink and yellow.
I like a bit of colour. I don't like to wear colour, but I like colour around me. And so I'm trying. I'm still learning.
See, I'm glad you said you're still learning, because that shows me that you want to learn and you want to evolve, and that's really nice.
Yeah,
I'm
a big fan of like always pushing up against your boundaries and getting out your comfort zone and trying to be better at what you're doing. And I'm really really keen to do that. Otherwise, it just gets so boring.
That's true.
It's so
That's
static.
definitely true.
Yeah, I'm not very good at staying still.
What are you most proud of that you stand for as an individual?
That's a good one. I think just if I think about kind of how I've lived my life and how I've found my way through life, I think standing up for being a strong woman and for not physically but mentally strong. And then I kind of look at how my daughter's turned out and how righteous and strong that she is. I kind of feel that has seen me through to this moment in time, and now it's having an impact on people who look up to me. And I say that in a way in that you kind of, when you get into a certain position, people do tend to look to you, and that actually came as a bit of a surprise to me as I kind of rose through the ranks, is that people actually start to pay attention to what you say.
Yeah.
I was just bobbing along, just, being myself, saying whatever came into my head. Turns out you can't do that. Turns out you have to be a bit more measured when people are looking at you. So yeah, so I hope I inspire others to be similar in their approach to the world and their approach to changing things and making a difference. Yeah.
What is the best advice you've ever received, Rebecca, and what have you done with that advice throughout your life?
I think, gosh, yeah, that's a good one. Do people answer this one really quickly, or do they have to think about it? Because
they think about it. They say my questions are actually quite hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they actually say that some of them are quite hard. I actually wrote 50 questions for you, Rebecca, but...
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I don't really know if there's ever one piece of advice I've ever been given. Did I listen to it as well? I mean, that's the other thing. Do I ever listen to advice? Yeah. Yeah, I can't honestly think of one piece other than, the usual, just do it, just, go for it. Those kinds of pieces of advice.
Yeah.
People who love you tend to tell you, don't they?
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you do differently if nobody was judging you at all?
Oh.
She got excited.
Oh yeah. Do you know what? I would be the arsiest, sweariest. I would literally just say what I thought at any given time. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to. I'm hoping when I'm in my old age and I'm, like the little shriveled up thing in the corner, I'm just gonna tell everybody I'm just gonna tell everyone what I really think.
I'm so gonna come and visit you.
Yeah. Catherine Tate, Nana on Catherine Tate. That'll be me. Yeah.
Oh man, when was the last time you felt totally at peace with yourself?
Oh, I don't know. It's really hard to think whilst being in lockdown. It's really weird, isn't it? It's kind of trying to think at a time before then. I think probably at some point when I've been in, on a somewhere tropical and just completely content. And my family we love going to South Beach in Miami, and that is where I feel really like completely relaxed, and it's got that kind of combination of nightlife and amazing scenery and the heat and whatnot. And yeah, with my family around me, I think that's probably when I feel most myself, I suppose. Yeah.
Oh, that's good for me. Here's a question for you. If I picked you up, put you on an island, and said to you that you're only allowed to take one president, one musician, and one photographer to have a conversation with, what 3 people would you take with you?
Oh, it's got to be Obama. I mean, that man he just makes me cry whenever he speaks. Aww. So he could just give me all his wisdom and read his book to me while I was sat on the beach. So it's got to be Obama. One musician, did you say?
Yeah, one musician. Yeah.
I think I'd probably take Luther Vandross. You probably don't even know who he is, do you?
What do you mean?
Oh. I thought I was showing my age then. I was just like him to sing to me.
I'm not that young. I'm not that young. How can you not? Luther, come on.
Come on. I'd have Obama reading to me. I'd have Luther singing to me, and then I would have photographer. Oh gosh, one photographer. I think I'd probably take. I feel like I need a woman there.
I was going to say you need to even it out a bit.
Female photographer. I'd probably take someone like Cindy Sherman. I know she's not a photographer, but she does take photos of herself, because I think she'd be good fun to have around.
That'd be quite a good conversation, actually.
Yeah. Maybe she could, we could do some prosthetics and put some crazy outfits on, and the 4 of us. Could you imagine?
I would love to take that picture. Oh man.
Luther, God rest his soul. Rest in peace, Luther.
Yeah, Luther. Hey, so this is the question that you kind of answered, but you didn't answer, which leads me on to my second to last question, which is, what would you like your legacy to be in the world?
I think I would like my legacy to be that I made a difference, that the point in time now can be traced back. Something can be traced back to this point in time, and that I was part of that. I think I don't need to necessarily be the one person, but to be part of a number of people who made changes and did something interesting and important and changed perceptions and helped the younger generation.
I think you're already doing that.
I hope so. That's definitely the plan.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely are. I'm going to throw in an extra one because it just came into my mind, and I thought, if I asked you this, I wonder what you would say. So my extra one is, what is one question that you would love people to ask you, but they never really ask you that question?
I don't know. They never really ask me that question.
Yeah. If there's something that you wish people would ask you, but no one never really does, what would that question be? I got you thinking. Wow.
You totally have. Yeah. I'm just trying to think. I don't tend to give a whole lot away. So I don't tend to, but then when I get started, I tend to, I jabber on forever. So I'm not really sure that, I think I'd probably answer the question even if I don't get, as you've probably experienced. I don't necessarily answer the question. I don't know. Maybe, what I'm going to do in the next part of my career. I don't know that what my aspirations are, what I hope to do with my life. I don't even have an answer, to be honest. But that's I'd never. Yeah, it would be. It does. You do tend to talk about what you've achieved and what you've done in the past, and not kind of where you want to go next. And also, being British, we're not very forthcoming, are we, about our dreams and aspirations, because we don't want to jinx them, and we're very modest.
So.
Don't you think?
Yeah, no, that is true.
project, I don't project my future self. I don't think about that a lot. So maybe I should. Maybe I'll ask people to ask me about it. It's to do with planning again, isn't it? It's like not having a plan. Yeah.
But sometimes it's good not to have a plan and be spontaneous because you don't have any expectations.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. Did you imagine you'd be doing this podcast? Could you see yourself being a podcaster?
No.
No.
I just saw there was something missing in the world, and I just wanted to help people to tell their story in their way, rather than be judged on a story by them saying something and someone automatically judging them by anything that comes out their mouth, which is what everybody does every day. Yeah. I just wanted people to be their authentic selves and not feel pressured. I wanted them to give people a positive energy or light that they could feel when I'm interviewing them. And that's why I decided to do the podcast, not for somebody's title, not for how many numbers I get of listeners, but authentically just for them to be themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely...
Well, there you go. You're changing the world as well.
I hope so, in some kind of way. I hope so.
But it's interesting how you see, you suddenly see that, you saw that gap and then you leapt into it. That's, I think, shows what kind of person you are as well. And I think that's kind of how the approach I would encourage everyone to have in life is just to jump in. I mean, what's the worst going to happen?
Yeah, well then it's better for you to try something than say to yourself, what if I tried it and it worked?
Yeah.
So I always have that kind of mental attitude in my head, but with a really huge humbleness as well. That humbleness means a lot to me, especially when you're doing things. It's good to be confident in what you're doing. It's good to have a mouth. It is good to have a mouth, but it's not what you say, it's how you say it that makes things happen too. So for me anyway, everyone has a different way of doing things, but sometimes as a woman especially, I feel that you do need to be firm in how you say things to get your point across so people will take you seriously. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Good for you. It's amazing.
Oh, there. So my last one for you, Rebecca, is where can we find you on all your social medias? If anybody would like to contact you just like I did, of having your humble presence, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, I think. My LinkedIn is Rebecca Swift. No, Dr. Rebecca Swift. I don't really do Twitter and I don't go on Facebook that much these days either.
Yeah,
I mean,
same.
I have an Instagram handle, but unless you want to be bored pictures of my dog and me out and about running, LinkedIn's the best place.
Oh man, Rebecca, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Yes People podcast. You've been such a great guest. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, you're most welcome, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the Yes People podcast, and please remember you can subscribe to Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can also donate to the Yes People podcast by simply going on the Savia Rocks website or just typing in paypal.me/Us People podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now is the time for me to focus. Stop all that playing hocus pocus. Stop doing it yourself. You need a little help. This time I want to see.
Like, you've got a very soft, it's a relaxing voice. It's not too, it doesn't jar. So I think when you find someone who, I mean, you could talk about anything and it would be nice to listen to. So, you could just blabber on. Just talk about your day, talk about your pizza. Just keep being amazing. And if you ever run out of people you want to talk to, I'm sure I can push some interesting folk your way. So just let me know.
Time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let Just enjoy the ride. Open those eyes, see the light. Ignite that fire inside it. Let it breathe breath into life. Push all your fears to the side. Control your mind, it's all alright. Enjoy your life, the joy is mine. Commit to you, you got the tools. Everything you do, you make the rules. Sometimes you need